Hello everybody, here we are again out at Mulgowie with David Cowan, having a bit of a fly over the Lantana in this particular area. Look, with this Lantana, if you have a look at how it is there's a very small amount of grassland left and everything else has been taken over. These people are still running a few cattle here, but it's a fight against the elements that they're never going to win. They're not going to spend enough money on cleaning this stuff up, so the inevitable is that this material takes over because our government policies are so inept, and they've completely given up on Lantana 110%. The only place they'll spend any money on it is in a tourist environment, and then they'll use land care and the free labour that comes with that and the insignificant amount of work that they do. It's absolutely appalling that the government has structured things like that. But you see how these clumps all are running down the roadside, on both sides of the road, down past the car. So you get a real feel for how this generates along the sides of the roads, really firms up. That's the biggest bushes you see. Look at the greenery of it, how intense it is, because that gets the most water because it runs off the road surfaces and funds all the plants that grow along those corridors. Birds then pick it up and they fly it to the tops of the hills. Now all of these lands here are all completely infested with Lantana pouring down like it is there in the shot there. And then eventually it becomes a solid mass. Now the drone is a very useful tool for being able to show you. You can't get the actual the understanding of how this material looks, but what it doesn't do for you, you don't realise how big these plants are. It's not till we cut back and we do the roadside drive past and you see what that actually looks like from ground level. But you can't get the feel of the area that it covers or the importance. See how that ravine comes down the centre of shot almost there and then feeds down onto that plateau below, and the intensity of the greenery in that centre section of the ravine. And then as it's in the flatter sections of it's still like it's sloped area, but it's falling down one single plane, so it gets half the water. That's not as intense and vivid green. So you start to see how much importance this material has in the water. And you can see the center section of all this grass here that is left, and there's not much of it, is only because the stock are still forcing their way through that. But as this stuff closes up and closes the clumps, eventually the cattle just don't bother pushing through it, and it accelerates its taking over. So you can see how bad that gets to be. Now down straight over shot and to the right there of the road, that hillside, that very steep hillside, that's all Lantana. From there all the way back to here has massive amounts of Lantana. You've never seen anything like this stuff. But you'll get a much better feel for it when we go back to the ground camera and we're driving down this road and the film starts. It's from where we're sitting now going down that road. But when you see that right hand side and left hand side, it's absolutely incredible to see how bad this is. And we saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hillsides exactly the same as this, all in different levels of being taken over. Hundreds of thousands of hectares of land, probably more like 1 million hectares of land throughout this whole Lockyer Valley area, is already basically lost. Cattle cannot keep up with this production, and as they pull the cattle out of there, you can see where the cattle have been removed from, and it's completely decimated. It is sped up like on fast forward. It is just devastating. All down through that valley to the left there, that's where we drove up from. That's all Lantana. So we just stopped. All of that stuff from the center point of that hill down that right hand side and into that ravine, that's all Lantana. All the way down to those houses down in center air shot almost now, that's all Lantana. And you'll see that from the roadside when I look back up. All the stuff along the tree line on the left-hand side, that's all Lantana. Everything down that centre of shot to that really steep mound on that hillside, that's all Lantana, all the way from there back to here. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these hills, as we drove around, are exactly the same. And our government has completely given up. Okay, you've got to understand that. It's not just the roadsides down the high, they have completely given up. Now, as properties get taken over like this, and the one further down on that hillside, on the right-hand side of that road, you see how they then become such a liability to every property around those properties. And that's, if you think of scale as being, a small scale being down the sides of the roads, and then it escalates to taking over that landscape, then eventually you end up with that landscape becoming a real liability to every other structure and ecosystem anywhere near it. And that's how this stuff just keeps growing so much faster all the time. It's picking up pace. And it's because where the government is leaving it growing, that it's picking up pace at an absolutely crazy rate. Now, this is where we've just driven off from that spot. And it's good to have both the drone. Look at the scale of that, and it didn't look that impressive from the drone. But you also can't get the feel for exactly how it moves across the landscape without the drone. So now you start to see most of these bushes are the size of this car, but they don't look that when you're looking at them downwards from the drone. But you can't cover the same area. When you look at this is close to a 30-minute long video, but we're traveling at 80 k's to 100 k's an hour in a lot of this stuff. So you can imagine the area that we covered just in this 30 minutes, and it is just continuous. And this is what they don't want you to see. The councils cover this up and leave this growing on the sides of the roads. It then takes over the hillsides and then comes flooding back down. Now, every time the rains come and the Lantana seeds, it drops its seeds in normal terrain at its feet. And those seeds stay there in the seed bed waiting for a flash flood. Look at that hillside. That's what you couldn't see before looking down at those houses there. That's all Lantana flooding down. Every one of those dark green dots is Lantana. And look at how much grassland's left within that. These people are all fighting a battle they cannot ever win unless the government starts to stop hiding and stop lying to the public. This is our country that we're losing. This is the scale and speed this is moving. In another 10 years' time, you wait and see what the film looks like as I film it. That whole hillside to that centre right is just all Lantana, all the way back here. This homestead, David was saying, that was occupied only up until about 12 months ago, and it's being completely consumed by Lantana. All that hillside over here, over the top of him here, all of that is Lantana, all pouring back down this way. Look at the differences where people are still running stock and maintaining their properties. Okay, so they've spent a lot more money on eradicating the Lantana, and they are directly opposite these things. But they are fighting. Look at the size of these Lantana bushes here. They are bigger than the car, each and every one of them, and there's millions of them. Look at that watercourse up that ravine, just absolutely decimated by it. But here on the left-hand side, you see where they're running more stock and they're caring for their paddocks. They're fighting an endless battle to keep it at bay. But once they give up and it gets too costly, and remember, the stronger these materials get across the road, like this whole hillside, the more it affects you, the more that you are spending on chemicals and fighting and time and labour. Now, for the people on the right-hand side, they're coming down in that little orange mule just over David here. Look at how tiny they are compared to the Lantana around them. And then you'll see how the Lantana has only got a single track through it where the cattle have been walking through it. Now, these people on the left-hand side have been working their asses off and spending a fortune on trying to keep their land clean. But as the infestations around them get worse and worse and worse, And people just don't realise this. That's all Lantana. You have a look as we get closer to it. You see there's only a little cattle track through it that's left. So the people are forced off the land to go to the city to work a job to pay for the land, and they can't derive any sort of income off that land anymore. So it's a self-prophesizing decline, and it affects thousands and thousands of acres and tens of kilometres around each one of these infestations. That hillside directly in front of us, for the right-hand side of this house coming up to our left, that whole hillside is completely Lantana from the tip of that mountain. And I know it's not a mountain. Look at this. There's only a little rat run runs through that Lantana. It's solid Lantana to the top of this hillside. And the council and government tell you not to worry about it. It's a done deal. We're finished with it. Well, it's not finished with us, I can assure you of that. 40 years of experience in eradicating this material, I can tell you that it is not finished with us. Absolutely appalling that this is what our Prime Minister and our Premiers and our agricultural ministers all cover up and lie and allow councils to illegally release this stuff into the environment. All of that's Lantana down there, just off the side of the road in front of us. All up those other hillsides over there. You can see it everywhere in the Lockyer Valley when you're driving around, and you start to get a real appreciation for the size of it. So, David said to me, so what did you think when I sent you that material? I said, I thought you were crazy. I tend to say things because I'm dyslexic, as they are. I said, well, from what I have seen in our area on mapping, it doesn't show like it does down here. I thought you were correct, but I couldn't believe the scale, so I was a little bit dubious as to whether you knew what you were talking about or not. But you look at what he's proven here, driving through every hillside through that left-hand side. Look at it. You can see it everywhere. It's a carpet of cancer, destroying our national treasures, destroying our ecology. And the government say we're only going to protect specific endangered species habitats, but the material is growing at such a rate that it's consuming land at 4 million hectares a year under the current government policies, and zero meaningful operations in eradication. So we are going to have to change our governments, that's for sure. That's going to be the minimum we have to go with, because the current prime ministers and the premiers are absolutely adamant that they're not going to do anything about this material. And you can see the levels. And we've only started filming this. This is only the beginning. That hillside directly in front of us, that mountain, is absolutely covered from top to bottom with that little odd coloured shape that's like a triangle just over the little bit to the left of that. You'll see it as we get closer. That section is where they're still running stock, and that's the only section that's holding against this continuous onslaught of this material. But see how it just floods back down to the roads. So once it's off the watercourses and roads and it's got the hillsides, then it comes spewing back down off those hillsides at a absolutely enormous rate. It's incredible how fast it travels down slope once it gets to the top of the hill. But it all starts from allowing this material to grow on the roadside and then grow in the creeks and watercourses, which is the stuff that they allow it to do. So we've got some very, very hard choices, because there's a lot of the conservation parks and the national parks have been responsible for these infestations gathering speed, and they're leaving them growing on the sides of roads with access to water. We cannot allow this material to have access to water under any circumstances. The growth rate, there's machinery in this stuff on the right hand side that's just being completely swallowed up. That whole hillside, as you start to see it getting closer, that whole hillside is all Lantana. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Please sit back and continue to watch the show. I'm sorry it's such a horrific subject, but unfortunately you need to know how terrible our government has been.
But see, I find that somewhere that they are
murkying the waters, and they're saying that it's wherever the what's name's been disturbed.
Yeah.
Look at the difference, the contrast between where it has more water running down the ravine and where it dries out off the shoulders of the ravine. It then shows a clear definition of how it responds
to water.
See, I've seen where I reckon that there are times that it actually prefers to have less water, right? Especially in the early stages. Later on, when it's really getting going, it's happier with a lot more water, but it then tends to seem to percolate that. Yep.
That track must be so they can get up to that tower.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Imagine what this would look like if the farmland wasn't here. Yeah, the farmland's the only thing that's holding it back. Otherwise, it would have just smothered, you know, all the way through.
Wait, yeah. You can see the difference in the colour up there.
Yeah. Is that the problem is I've been through there 20 times now recently, you know, and I'm still slowing down at 40 k's an hour to look at the Lantana that I've already seen and talk about it, and you suddenly go, hold on, I need to be somewhere, I need to get going and not be dawdling looking at all this stuff. It's everywhere. Out living down on the flats. Looks like they're getting less and less land all the time.
It used to be all cattle. All the hills were cattle. That's where they used to put them to feed. There's no cattle in no more.
Pretty decent floodplain when it's running, eh? Does it normally get much rain in this catchment as opposed to normally Somerset? Why haven't I get it?
No. It goes through Burner or goes out through Kilcoy. This sort of area misses out. In this whole scenario is with
with there being no real plan,
It's just got to keep going.
but their other side of that plan was that the development would catch up and, you know, deal with where it is. But development's never going to get out, not for another 100 years is development going to get out to places like this. And how are they planning to feed the people? Jeez, look at it up there.
Yeah. You can't even really use this as tourist. Bring the Japanese to show them the lovely flowers.
Yeah. And we'll squeeze you some oil while we're here.
And all the I know beekeeping oil things that come up to our place because there's heaps of flowers, the bees don't go on it.
No.
So, you know, bees don't even want it.
But according to the government, some animals do like it.
Yes.
They just don't say what one.
Yeah, brown snakes.
I haven't seen any in it.
Like what?
Yeah. I haven't seen any in it.
I've seen them come out underneath it.
Yeah. I haven't had that. Well, I'm glad I don't like them, but
Okay, someone's horse has escaped. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah.
Now, the Aboriginals used to camp in these areas up here,
Yeah.
and I can prove it. Because up here is the only known
Some more, heaps of them.
yeah, up here is the only known that wouldn't be.
Sorry? Yeah, they've been in there and
Yeah.
escaped.
Yeah,
Wow, they got some horses.
up here is the only known Aboriginal carvings in southeast Queensland.
Alright. Some decent caves up the top there.
Yeah.
Cave with a view. Yeah, you're not real worried, are you, buddy?
Like that.
It's incredible.
Bloody Chapel Cuckoo. They take the eggs out of other birds' nests
Alright.
and lay theirs there.
So, where is this? Is this the conservation park or?
No, this is Chalk Mine Road. It goes up to a mine where they mine diatomaceous earth.
Alright, okay. That's supposed to be the be-all, end-all, isn't it, for growing stuff, isn't it?
No, diatomaceous earth, that's what they
Oh, that's the stuff for the chickens.
they put it down on oil spills.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Some kitty litters diatomaceous earth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's completely taken over the whole environment. This road sort of shows you we're not on the highway, and this isn't farming. This was never farming,
Yeah,
and it's here.
in these levels.
Yeah, there's no fences around here, so never farming wasn't seen as viable for farming. And that there is your rock carvings.
Alright.
Yeah, the only it's actually had a cave in that rocks come down.
Yeah.
They've actually got a stainless steel thing
Plant.
up there, and they've actually done laser etching to show you what it used to look like.
Alright.
But that's the only known carvings, Aboriginal carvings in all of southeast Queensland and I don't think I've ever met anyone who knew they were in there.
Right. So is the mine still operational?
Yeah.
All right.
Actually the story of how they used to go to Bunya Forest. They're sort of like it's like a road map telling them where to go.
Ah.
They couldn't go there now without wearing bloody long sleeves and long pants.
Yeah, that's it.
People who say it doesn't hurt the environment and cattle and everyone else has done it. No.
But see, it's just like that guy that you were talking to the other day, is that, you know, for him, he wants to say, oh, I've dealt with it for 30 years, but that's on his block of land, in his terrain, and he's not telling you that the horses or the cattle were eating it, only that he kept them, see?
Yeah.
And then other people take that to mean that it's safe for their horses and cattle to eat it. That's why I was so hard on him. You get a bit fed up with people wanting to promote those type of things, and then they get offensive when you tell them that's not exactly like that.
Slow down. The horses are there.
They're pretty cruisy.
Yeah.
What a mess. How much an acre would you pay for this land?
You couldn't give it to me.
But you don't want another project for the next 3,000 years.
But if someone's got it on your land and they don't want it to get like this, they need to do something about it now.
Yeah, well that's the part that you're trying to get people to understand.
All the way to the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there is nothing else there.
Yeah, no. Well, all the food's gone in it, like that, and on a lot of that flat down the back there, it's completely gone as well.
But there is no vegetation or habitat for native animals.
No.
But you can see why Lockyer Council don't want to subsidise poison anymore.
No.
They'll subsidise it for other stuff, but not Lantana.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Gary, and I just wanted to show you some stuff with this Lantana seeds. So that basically shows you exactly how this material floats. So when they're telling you about the spread of Lantana and it's only birds and it's only animals that spread Lantana, water's the greatest spreader of Lantana you've ever met. And that changes the whole ball game. Changes the ball game of liability, and it changes the ball game of the spread of the material, because all of the watercourses that it lives down has a direct link and a direct effect on exactly how far the zone of influence of this material extends to. And it shows you even further the corruption within the biosecurity and the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries and the DPI and the Prime Minister and the Premiers. The fact that this material is moved so drastically by water changes the ball game completely that we face as a nation. This material can never hold ground on watercourses, on drainage ditches, on high elevation surfaces, because that changes everything. It moves it for miles and miles and miles. Could move it for hundreds and even, well, actually it's on record as having moved thousands of kilometres in one single flood. Then why aren't we treating this thing seriously? It's infesting your properties all along the sides of the roads, and that's going to change everything in the future. So just thought I'd show you that little important part of that puzzle, because you really do need to see that to understand how much they lie. And when the birds eat those seeds, they die. Exactly the same as the cattle and everything else that eats lantana. It destroys their liver and they die. So at the end of the day, there are no safe things with this material, especially in those colours, those reds and other colours there. So thank you very much for watching. That's just a short video, but it's a very important piece of information that needs to get out to everybody, and they need to be concerned. Okay, I'll catch you later. I'm Gary from Lantana Removal Queensland, 0449 986 880, and we're still pushing all of the Prime Minister and Premiers after 12 months to even bother to take action. Okay, talk to you later. Bye-bye.